Hello, it's me again. I thought I just would make a follow-up video to my last one, which was about the High Court hearing in New Zealand where the Jehovah's Witnesses were seeking a judicial review because they wanted to be released from the abuse and care inquiry. And by now you've probably seen that they lost. The judge did not rule in their favour, and the decision heard, I think it was 77 pages, was released last, I can't remember what day, a few days ago anyway. So you may have had a chance to see that. But I thought I'd just give a little summary for perhaps those who didn't see my last video or don't really want to read the decision because it's pretty lengthy. It basically could be summarised like this. So the Royal Commission has the authority and the right to clarify, expand and even change the terms of reference and to define them. The amendment order was done in a correct way and no rights of the Jehovah's Witnesses have been breached. So that pretty much sums it up. So the Commission was allowed to continue to investigate and report findings on the Jehovah's Witnesses. But the Jehovah's Witnesses have responded saying that they are considering their legal options. So let's see what transpires. I think it would be rather ridiculous of them to try and appeal this. I can't really see how they could be successful if they were to do that. But you never know. So the Radio New Zealand, who had reported on the hearing and wrote several articles about it, also published an article about the decision, and I might just read it for you, for those who perhaps can't be bothered looking for it. It's very short. So it's called "Why a Legal Bid by the Jehovah's Witnesses to Evade the Royal Commission into Abuse and Care Failed." The Jehovah's Witness Church does not have a fundamental right to avoid scrutiny from the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care, a High Court judge says. The Church sought a judicial review to be exempt from the inquiry, arguing it was beyond the inquiry's scope because it did not run institutions that cared for children or vulnerable people. The bid was dismissed by the High Court last week. In her judgment released on Tuesday, Justice Rebecca Ellis set out the reasons why. There is no fundamental right to avoid scrutiny, nor is there a right to be subject only to certain degrees of scrutiny, especially in the context of allegations of abuse, Ellis wrote. An inquiry does not in itself affect legal rights. An inquiry is just that, an inquiry. The Church accused the inquiry of willfully miscasting its religion and ignoring evidence showing why it should be excluded, which Ellis also dismissed. Indeed, the opposite is the case. The evidence suggests that the Royal Commission has sought to engage actively with and obtain the views of the Jehovah's Witnesses and has responded appropriately when concerns have been raised. The Church has claimed that its policies prevented elders, who are like ministers, from spending time alone with children. It was also thrown out by Alice, who said evidence provided to the inquiry and from overseas showed otherwise. She said, whatever the Jehovah's Witnesses' policies might be, what sometimes happens in practice may be different. It is clear that elders are sometimes left alone with children. I am unable to agree that the mere fact of the policy's existence must operate to protect that elder or the wider institution from scrutiny by the Royal Commission. It goes without saying, I hope, that no faith-based institution would adopt a policy or practice that was intended to facilitate abuse. The inquiry's scope was expanded to include faith-based institutions in November 2018 after lobbying from religious groups and survivors, The Jehovah's Witness faith is the only group to oppose being involved, culminating in its application for a judicial review in May. Alice said the inquiry's primary purpose was fundamentally remedial. It might be thought, although it's plainly not the case, that the pursuit of such purposes would be welcomed by any faith-based institution, she said. A little bit sarky there. Former Jehovah's Witness elder turned advocate Shane Meachin said survivors were relieved and happy with Alice's comments. Happy in the sense that the judge had a pretty clear understanding of how the Jehovah's Witnesses work and was not allowing the wool to be pulled over her eyes. She basically saw through that they were trying to waste time, like they did at the Australia Royal Commission, said Shane Meachin said. Former Jehovah's Witness Michael Steens said it was unfortunate the church took such a litigious approach, given the inquiry's purpose was remedial and not judicial. The Jehovah's Witnesses anchor their perspective in scriptural readings and policies, emphasising parental responsibility. However, the gap between stated policies and their actual practice is evident, Steen said. The decision highlights the need for institutions to strike a balance between upholding their internal beliefs and meeting societal expectations for the safety and well-being of their members. In a statement, the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses Australasia, which oversaw New Zealand congregations and filed the case, said it was studying the judgment and considering our legal options. So that was the article. Nice brief summary. I found it quite interesting though that the article sort of focused on, where is it? The policies. This was quite interesting because during the hearing itself, when the lawyers for the Jehovah's Witnesses were talking about elders not being alone with children, they didn't actually show any such policy in existence that required elders not to be alone with children. And I noticed online on X, formerly Twitter, that many other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses were scratching their heads about this alleged policy the Jehovah's Witnesses claim to have. And because it was they may have asked this because one of the news articles about the hearing, I think it was in the Post on the 11th of October, said, it just made a statement that the Jehovah's Witnesses have a policy for parents not to put their children with elders in their care. And I thought, oh, okay, so there's a policy that says that. Where is that? So I looked online and asked a few people, and nobody could think of any printed policy anywhere that said that either elders should not be alone with children or that parents should not put their children alone with elders. I don't think there is a policy that says that. So this article that I just read you, it talks about the church's claim that its policies prevented elders from spending time alone with children. But what policy? Regardless of whether the policy exists or not, the judge did go on to say, I am unable to agree that the mere fact of the policy's existence, I don't think it is a fact. Yeah, so I probably didn't read it very well before. I'll reread this sentence from the judge. I am unable to agree that the mere fact of the policy's existence must operate to protect that elder or the wider institution from scrutiny by the Royal Commission. It goes without saying, I hope, that no faith-based institution would adopt a policy or practice that was intended to facilitate abuse. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But yeah, so she talks about this policy, but I doubt if she's actually seen one. The Jehovah's Witnesses have claimed to have a policy, but my suspicion is that their policy is to be gleaned from little bits here and there in the Watch How and Awake magazines over the decades that are just common sense advice to parents not to put your children alone with, well, mainly a stranger, but at the same time they do acknowledge that abusers are often people known and trusted by the family. So it's just common sense advice on just being mindful and careful of who your children are with, but there's no policy as such saying not to have them alone with elders, or for elders not to put children with other adults that aren't their parents. I don't think there is a policy, not something you could call a policy. So one thing that the Jehovah's Witnesses lawyer brought up when she was talking about children being alone with adults, with elders, she brought up the July 20th, 1998 Body of Elders letter, where it talked about the role and position of elders. And actually I can read you, oh maybe I can't, I haven't got it. That letter talked about elders and ministerial servants being put in a position of trust, and that you know, congregants will trust them, and therefore it's important that they do not appoint men who, or be quick to appoint men who have been accused of child sexual abuse in the past. Because just by being an elder, having that elder status, confers them with that trust. You know, the congregants will automatically trust them because they feel that they've been vetted by the organisation, if you like, and that they are trustworthy. And that's pretty much what that Body of Elders letter said. But there was no, she didn't bring up any policy that said elders shouldn't be alone with children. That's the best thing she could come up with. And it actually, it seemed to go against her arguments really, because I mean, it said that because they are trusted by the congregants, that parents may be more liberal in allowing their children to be with elders. So it kind of, it really worked against her argument, and because she'd been saying prior to this, she'd been arguing that if there is a trust relationship between a congregant and an elder, it's not because of the institution, that they're not responsible for that. But it's up to the parent. You know, if the parent has to work out whether they can trust the elder before leaving their child with them. But this Body of Elders letter was saying the opposite, that it's that conferral of authority as an elder, that elder status and label is what will make people trust them. You know, so that puts some responsibility on the institution. And she was arguing that the institution has no responsibility. If a parent leaves their child in the care of an elder and something happens to their child, it's all on them, all on the parent, and not on the institution. So anyway, it was kind of weird how that, I was scratching my head at that part of the hearing. I'm still kind of scratching my head over that. Okay, so I just wrote down a couple of notes so I don't forget to tell you anything. She did stress too, the lawyer for the JWs, that she said parental autonomy is a fundamental tenet of the faith. And when she said it, I thought, try telling that to a parent who's just told their child, no, you can't go to university. You know, the institution has a great deal of control over the decisions parents make for their children. So kind of a bit of a joke, really. Okay. Oh, another point from that lawyer. She very emphatically stated, and I recorded her words, she said, "It's not the policy or the practice to put children in care of elders." So despite hearing evidence from survivors and statements from other people like Shane Meechan, he provided evidence that as an elder he would often have children alone in his care. So despite this evidence, they were still had the nerve, I want to use gumption, to say that it's not their practice to put children in the care of elders. I mean, there is a difference between policy and practice, you know, what happens in real life, isn't there? But they're kind of treating it as if it's the same. Okay. Now, listening to this in court, one other thing she did say, sorry, I'm sort of stuttering my way through this, but another thing she said was that, you know, elders who are disfellowshipped for child sexual abuse, she said they are never allowed back in, and that rang alarm bells. I thought, what? That's not true. She made it sound like they're disfellowshipped and they can never be reinstated, which I don't know if that's what she meant, if she understood things that way, or whether it was a slip of the tongue. But when she said that, I felt I needed to write to the Commission and just clarify that, and along with a few other things. So I actually wrote to the Commission a couple of times with some additional information, which I think it might be quite good if I just read it. So I wrote to the counsel for the Royal Commission, who I met at the hearing. So I, you know, thanked him for his work, etc. Then I said, I also want to bring to your attention some matters that concerned me at the High Court hearing in relation to the evidence that Sarah Jerubine presented. That was the lawyer for the JWs. With regards to those who had been disfellowshipped for child sexual abuse, she incorrectly stated that they would never be allowed back in. Perhaps I heard her incorrectly, or perhaps she meant to say that they would never be permitted to serve as elders or ministerial servants again, which I do not believe to be true either. She spoke to parental autonomy, describing it as a fundamental tenet of the faith. I had the impression from her presentation that there was a policy that instructed elders not to be alone with children. She referred to a letter to the body of elders from 1998 regarding the position of Jehovah's Witnesses, regarding trust and oversight, and included the words, put in a position of trust, and judged by others as being worthy of trust. She read no instruction to elders not to be alone with children, but I had misunderstood. It was only after reading in the media that JW's alleged existence of a policy for parents not to leave their children alone with an elder that I realised the onus was on parents to ensure that the elder is trustworthy. I wonder how they would do that. Would they simply ask them, is my child safe with you? Or check a register for sexual offenders, which would probably not yield any names as they don't generally report to the secular authorities. I would like to know where the policy is for parents. Is the policy available to congregants to be gleaned from bits and pieces and Watchtower articles printed over the years, as was their policy on child protection formerly? Bear in mind that until recent years, Jehovah's Witnesses receive 4 magazines a month. Any policy would be buried within a mountain of information that most Jehovah's Witnesses do not find the time to read. I would hardly describe this as a policy, just common sense advice scattered here and there. Following the Australian Royal Commission, the Jehovah's Witnesses have made efforts to collate various scattered bits of information in an official scripturally based position on child protection document. It is available upon request to congregants. If congregants are aware of its existence, then they know that they don't need to request it because it's already publicly available on the website. Shouldn't it be proactively put in the hands of every parent? The policy that parents most need to know in order to best protect their children is the one that is kept from them. That is the one contained in the Elders Only Shepherd the Flock handbook. If they are aware of the exact institutional response to child sexual abuse allegations outlined there, then they will know there could very well be an alleged or confessed but unreported child molester in their congregation sitting next to them. I have found that a considerable number of Jehovah's Witnesses, via contacts on social media, are of the belief that the elders report all allegations to the police. They have no idea that even in countries that do have mandatory reporting, the institution will make use of the clergy exception if available to them. Ms. Jerubine also stated that it's not the policy or practice of the institution to put children in the care of an elder. I dispute that. The Commission has heard evidence that it is very commonly practiced. I can personally testify to that as well. Ms. Jerubine said the institution bears no responsibility if something should go wrong because the parent has the responsibility of care for their child and it was up to them to ensure the elder was trustworthy. She says this institution assumes no responsibility of care whatsoever when abuse occurs. I would argue that the institution bears some of the blame. The institution appoints elders. It also qualifies elders as teachers. The institution charges elders with teaching by example. When elders make a practice of being alone with minors in the various activities of Jehovah's Witnesses and place minors in the care of a non-parent for the ministry, they are teaching by example that this practice is acceptable. That, coupled with the instruction to honour, obey and trust the elders, means that parents will not usually think twice about leaving a child in the care of an elder. I would like to direct you to the book that Jehovah's Witnesses currently study with their children and interested persons in the wider community. It's Enjoy Life Forever, an interactive Bible course. Lesson 20 discusses how the congregation is organised. It discusses in very simple terms the role of elders. Point 5 is headed Elders Teach by Example, and point 6, we can cooperate with the elders. Please watch the video Elders Take the Lead, particularly from the 4-minute 45-second onwards point. It absolutely stresses the requirement for elders to lead by example, stating that the members will follow their example. What is disturbing to me is that the institution of Jehovah's Witnesses also makes children more responsible for protecting themselves from sexual predators than it does elders, who may know of sexual predators in their midst. This should be the last line of defence, not the first. Even though some Watchtower literature has mentioned the grooming of children, noting that perpetrators are often friendly with the family, great with children, etc., the cartoon, made especially for children, depicts such bad men as ghoulish-looking monsters. Children will have those images etched in their minds. Bad men that can hurt them or look like scary monsters. But elders know that they do not. From time to time, JW.org has published videos that encourage minors and young adults to make friends and spend time with older ones in the congregation. There is nothing inherently wrong with this, and the videos don't depict children alone with them, but it could make access to children a lot easier for sexual predators and make children more receptive to their advances. Also see the Organised to Do Jehovah's Will book, page 76, which states that although parents are primarily responsible for their own children, others in the congregation may wish to help young ones who are motivated from the heart to share in the kingdom preaching work. This provides an opportunity for access to children that is sanctioned by the institution and doesn't raise any eyebrows. I'm not certain whether this information could be of assistance to the Royal Commission or could be forwarded to Judge Rebecca Ellis. I don't know if there is a process for doing that at this late stage. Thank you for reading. So I heard back from him and he said, yep, he agreed with all of that. So that's good. I also I actually sent in another a few more references, which, well, I'm not sure how much information the Royal Commission actually has. So anyway, I thought it wouldn't hurt to just send them this. I'll just read it. I'm sure the Royal Commission must have the current Elders Manual, Shepherd the Flock of God. I just wanted to add these excerpts that may have been overlooked, although I don't think so. I want to highlight the Elders' responsibility to provide accurate theocratic direction by means of their example. By putting themselves alone in situations with minors and by putting other individuals alone with them, they are not setting the example. They are viewed as spiritual men and worthy of imitation because of their elder status. Congregants are instructed and have no choice but to view them this way. It seems the institution is not monitoring the behaviour of elders or requiring elders to monitor and correct each other, at least not effectively or adequately. Perhaps this is an area the final report could comment on, in addition to what Mr. Butler, the Attorney General, proposed as potential findings at the hearing last week. So then I just sent him PDF of various excerpts from the Shepherd the Flock of God book, from the introduction, which I assume is chapter 1, paragraph 1, chapter 2, paragraph 4, and chapter 8, paragraph 5 and 7, which stressed the fact that elders teach by their example, and the institution requires them to teach by example. So if they're setting a bad example, then some of that falls on the institution for not making sure that they are keeping a good example. So anyway, it sounds a bit convoluted, doesn't it? Sorry, I've been talking and talking and talking. I hope you're still with me. But the final thing I wanted to tell you, oh dear, I do apologise, my brain's a bit funny, but away with the fairies today. But during the hearing, when Mr. Butler, who was there representing the Attorney General, and he explained that his role was as a contradictor and that he was representing the public interest. So he was putting forward to the judge reasons why it would be of interest to the public to keep the Jehovah's Witnesses in the inquiry. So he went through a list of potential findings that the Royal Commission could make. So he stressed that he is not the Royal Commission. He is not, he's not necessarily in agreement with the Royal Commission. He's kind of like neutral. But he went through what some potential findings could be made and reported on in the Royal Commission's final report. So I'll just run through these. He said there could be findings made on the Judicial Committee meeting, on the training of those in authority in providing care. So what kind of training do the elders and the ministerial servants have? What policies and rules does the institution have to limit access to children? Do they have any? What are they? Are they good enough? What processes for handling and responding to complaints do they have, including referrals, like referring to perhaps outside sources like maybe child protection or therapy, psychologists, whatever, police, yeah. Or do they have anything in place, any procedures for doing that? How do the beliefs and the influence or the power of elders in providing their spiritual advice, how do they affect things? Is there coercive elements in how things are done? What is the institution doing to counteract child sexual abuse? And he actually said this, and I quoted him verbatim. He said, "Some people might need to look in the mirror. Look at their tenets. Are they protecting children?" So he was aiming that at the Jehovah's Witnesses. He asked about, he said that findings could be made about the Jehovah's Witnesses' internal processes for redress. And I thought, what? There isn't any. There's none. Does the conferral of authority on an elder contribute to harm? Are the judicial processes survivor focused? Is it right or proper not to report abuse to the police? Should charity registration be considered? And regarding the processes for handling child sexual abuse allegations, he said, and I quoted him exactly, he says, things might have to work differently. So there are quite a few things he suggested here that the Royal Commission could make findings on and comment on in their final report. So I will wait with bated breath to see what they do put in the report, bearing in mind that the work of the Commission has been huge. It's been the volume of work, the volume of complaints has been absolutely overwhelming, and they have been extremely stretched. Not only their finances and the time scale they had to work in, which was extended, they have been extremely stretched, and I think very, very shocked and dismayed at the nature and extent of abuse in care in New Zealand. And of course, Jehovah's Witnesses are only one tiny group within that, the whole workload. And some of the abuse in some of these other institutions has been absolutely shocking, just mind-blowingly shocking. I'll tell you one example of it. It was a child's, like an orphanage, a home in Wellington, New Zealand. And the man in charge of the home, where there are like vulnerable children living there, he pimped the children out. Not only did he have sexual relations with them, but he basically sold their services to other people. So we're talking about some very, very, very serious criminal offending here. So it kind of puts the Jehovah's Witness issue into a bit more perspective. But we'll wait and see. You know, there are serious flaws, obviously, with the way Jehovah's Witnesses handle child sexual abuse allegations. And this inquiry was not just about sexual abuse. It was any kind of abuse, physical, emotional, of children and vulnerable adults. So it covered a lot of people. You know, our prisons in New Zealand are full of people who were abused as children. So there's some very serious issues that need to be addressed. But hopefully, whatever the Commission recommends to the government, the Jehovah's Witnesses hopefully will come under that umbrella, and things will be made a lot better, I hope. Anyway, thank you for bearing with me up to this point. I've sort of lost my train of thought a little bit, but I hope you get the gist. Okay, see you next time. Bye.